Next call for Kitty Kelly, Terry in Brooklyn, New York. Hello.
Big fan of Book TV. This truly has been the greatest in-depth I've ever seen. You guys could easily do another 3 hours. Miss Kelly, my wife would like me to say before I go any further, she thinks your neck piece is very, very beautiful.
What have you enjoyed? Terry, have you read any of Kitty Kelly's work?
Got all her books. The Sinatra book is the greatest book I've ever read, one of the most fascinating. I have two questions. First one, Miss Kelly, have you read the George Jacobs Sinatra book?
Yes, and I interviewed George Jacobs at length for my book. Yes, I did read his book. It's hysterically funny, and it's...
I'm sorry, please, Peter, talk Peter into having him on.
George Jacobs was the valet to Sinatra. And he traveled with Sinatra. He used to sign for Sinatra. He was a very funny man. I'm afraid now that I'm afraid he's kind of slipped into dementia. And but he was a wonderful source. And yes, I did read his book. It was very good. You know, I told you that sometimes you're turned down for interviews, and I had tried to get an interview with this woman, Nancy Gunderson, who was not only a romance of Sinatra's, but then became a friend of his. So she really would be someone to interview, and she wouldn't give me an interview. And 2 years ago, I was out in the desert in Palm Springs with my husband, and gave a speech someplace. This woman came up to me afterwards and she said, quote, "Do you want that interview now?" And I thought, maybe she's great. What's she talking about? And she said, "No, I'm serious. Do you want the interview?" And I looked at this very attractive woman and I said, I don't quite understand. And she said, "Nancy Gunderson?" I said, "You've got to be kidding me." And we had lunch, and we became friends. And I said I would really like, I know it's way past the Sinatra book, but I'd like to write a piece on you and how this came about, and your recollection of Sinatra, and why you didn't marry him, and how. And she said, fine. So 30 or 40 years after you write a book, you never know what'll come your way.
Well, as our caller Terry probably knows, we don't do much on celebrities. We're politics and nonfiction, history, public policy, but we did manage to work in a little Frank Sinatra. The one person we haven't worked in yet is Liz Taylor. Could you very quickly assess your opinion of Liz Taylor after writing this book?
It was my least favorite book. I thought it's all husbands, jewelry stores, and hospitals. And that's unfair. The politics part of the book is fascinating because she was a liberal Democrat, and she married John Warner, and she really helped get John Warner elected. And I think most people thought that he wasn't the most impressive when he went to the Senate, but he became impressive and worked very, very hard. She was bored to tears. She hated Washington. He was paying no attention to her. He worked around the clock. So the political side of the Liz Taylor book is interesting, but it was my least favorite book.
Because of the topic? I mean,
well, it shouldn't have been.
Because of who she is, or because of what you found?
I don't know, Peter, and I'll tell you, when I wrote this book, I had access to all the legal files at MGM, and they were fabulous. Files on every movie, who did what, directors and producers and co-stars. And she really was the last star of a studio system that doesn't exist anymore. And for that reason, I chose her because she impacted our social culture so much. But I wasn't drawn in. And after that, I knew that I wouldn't write about Hollywood again.
Did you have a favorite of all the books you've written?
Well, every book that you finish is your favorite. It really is. Every book you finish, because you just think, I'll never get through this. I'll never. Getting the interviews is tough. Doing the research is tough. The writing is excruciating. So my favorite part is writing the acknowledgments. And the very best part of writing a book is getting to sign it for someone. So I'd say I love doing all of the books, with the possible exception of that one.
Agnes, Jacksonville, Oregon. Hello.
Hello, and I'm very happy to hear about St. Catherine. May she be a pope someday. But anyway, we talked about the kitchen cabinet, and I was in the Bay Area. I believe it was Representative McCloskey, who was a Republican, and waiting in his outer office when I was reading this huge picture that was draped up on the wall, and it had all the members of the kitchen cabinet. And I realized as I started laughing out loud, nobody in the Republicans' office had read everything. And they were all members, very subtly marked their history, that came from the Bechtel Corporation, which was also connected with the Grove in the San Francisco area, where they would meet annually to pick strong representatives to run for office. And I just saw that name Bechtel with their subcontractor connected with the NSA, National Security. And
okay, Agnes, I apologize. We've seen a lot. She's got a lot of connections here, Kitty Kelly.
I don't know how to put them all together. I thought she was going to say that she saw this photograph and they were all white men. And I was ready, but I don't know quite where she was going with this. But the connection to the NSA brings us back to what the man asked about
perhaps
Snowden.
the power in this town, and where does it reside? And so.
Well, it certainly resides here. This is the capital of the country, and the power resides with the Supreme Court and with Congress, and then with the President.
Amy, Portland, Oregon. When Miss I'm just going to read it verbatim. When Miss Kelly leaves this world, what will happen to all of her notes and interview recordings?
Amy, I do have them all. I do have them all. And I've saved them because you never know. I did it in the beginning to document all my work for lawyers. I don't know what'll happen to it.
You haven't decided?
No, and as a matter of fact, when I inherited the archive of Stanley's photographs, people said, why don't you donate it? Donate it to a library. And I said, no, it'll get lost. It'll never be shown. I mean, the Library of Congress has got vast materials that never get shown, and I was determined. Stanley had trusted me enough with his work, and I felt that I should share it. And I really felt strongly I should not profit from it. So that's why the Capturing Camelot book will go to the DC Public Libraries. I've already paid royalties to them, and please buy the Let Freedom Ring so I can pay royalties to the Children's Defense Fund. So those photographs I haven't donated, I've kept, and they're online for people at, can I give the website?
Absolutely.
www.stanleytredick.com.
And if people want to contact you after this interview, what's the best
Well, they
website?
better call you. Oh, I'd love to hear from them.
Do you have a website?
Oh, I do. Thank you. Say goodnight, Gracie. Good night. It's KittyKellyWriter.com.
Kitty Kelly Writer. And
Kitty Kelly, and it's Kelley, fancy Irish, writer.com.
Kitty Kelly has been our guest for the last 3 hours. Jackie O was her first book. It came out in 1978, followed by her least favorite, Elizabeth Taylor, The Last Star, 81. His Way, the unauthorized biography of Frank Sinatra, 1987. Nancy Reagan, the unauthorized biography, 92. The Royals, about the British royal family, 97. The Family, the real story of the Bush dynasty, 2004. Oprah, a biography, 2010. And her most recent picture books, Capturing Camelot, Stanley Tredick's iconic images of the Kennedys, and Let Freedom Ring, Stanley Tredick's iconic images of the March on Washington. KittyKellyWriter.com is the website. This is Book TV on C-SPAN 2. Thank you for being with us the last 3 hours.
Thank you.